You're listening to Served Up, a podcast that features inspiring beverage professionals and topic experts that share their passions through meaningful conversations. I'm your host, Bridget Albert, also known as the Market Fresh Mixologist, an industry mentor with decades of experience. Grab a cocktail and sit back. Let's learn how we can make a positive impact in our industry. Hey y'all, Bridget here. I had the chance to sit down with Dolph Lundgren. He's best known for his iconic role as Drago in Rocky IV, as he made his bold shift from Hollywood action star to entrepreneur with the launch of Hard Cut Vodka. A chemical engineering graduate, Dolph combined his technical expertise and passion for quality spirits to create a premium vodka crafted from Idaho russet potatoes. Hard Cut Vodka, named to reflect a decisive transition, much like Dolph's own career, offers a smooth, refined experience standing out in a crowded vodka market. Teaming up with his wife, Emma, Dolph has developed a vodka that embodies his dedication to excellence. With its rich flavor, Hard Cut Vodka has already earned recognition, including a double gold medal at the San Francisco World Spirits Competition. For Dolph, this new venture represents more than just a business. It's a personal passion to redefine the vodka experience and offer something truly exceptional. So sit back, relax, make yourself a hard cut vodka martini, and enjoy the show. Dolph, welcome to Served Up. I'm really happy to have you on the show today.
Thanks, Bridget.
You're welcome. Before we really dive into your current projects, I would love to go back to a bit of your early life because you really have such an interesting journey, Dolph. I know you started your career really studying chemical engineering and would love to know that part of you, as a student and making that major switch to acting. So can you talk about, what drew you to chemical engineering and how did you envision your future back then?
Yeah, thanks. Good question. Well, I was a science student when I was in high school. My dad was an electrical engineer, and my older brother a chemical engineer. And I sort of decided I wanted to impress my dad, and I wanted to study engineering. Turned out to be chemical engineering. And his favorite school was MIT in Boston. And he always talked about MIT. And I was actually admitted to the medical program as well. But I made a choice to go into engineering. So I could have been Dr. Lundgren, but anyway, I became a chemical engineer. I did my fourth year on a scholarship in Australia, Sydney, Australia, the University of Sydney, studying chemical engineering. Petroleum engineering was my specialty. And before that, I'd been on scholarships at Washington State University in Washington and also Clemson in South Carolina. So my plan was to go to MIT in Boston, and I applied to a number of schools. I applied to Caltech and Princeton, and I was admitted to Caltech in California, but I wanted to go to MIT, and I wrote a letter to the professor over there at the institution asking if they could postpone the admission admission window to open it up a little longer because I was getting my grades from Australia. It's a 6-month kind of, it's the Southern Hemisphere. So you get the grades in December, not in June. So they did that. And I was admitted to MIT, and I had 6 months off between finishing Australia and going to starting school in September. And I'd met this girl in Australia. I was working as a bouncer at a rock concert because I was also a martial artist. Mm-hmm. I had a second-degree black belt in karate at the time, and I was trying to make some cash on the side. So I worked at rock concerts, and one of the acts was Grace Jones, and she was a famous singer from New York, and we ended up having an affair, and I ended up going to see her in the Bahamas halfway through my year. Just a nightmare. I had to fly like 35 hours while I was working on my thesis, my master's thesis, on the plane. Crammed in next to these two Australian rugby players, bigger than me, and coach, of course. So it was tough, but I pulled that off. And then after school was over, I was going to meet her in Tokyo because I was training with the main dojo, main martial arts center in Tokyo. So I went up there, and she was doing a commercial. So I met her again in Tokyo, and we kind of fell in love. And I decided to go back to New York and hang out with her. And, I was this kind of tall, blonde, Swedish guy, kind of, very muscular and I guess strikingly looking. I didn't really realize it myself, but, we ended up going to Studio 54, and I ran into Andy Warhol and a bunch of other people, Michael Jackson. It was a long story. But...
Oh my God, what was that like? Can we just stop? My mind is like...
Yeah.
You're my first guest to come on here and talk about Studio 54. What was that like, Dolph? You're a young man. You're walking in there in New York. You're not from America. You're saying that you're this tall, hunky man walking into this club of sex and craziness. What was it like?
It was amazing. It was it was very impressive. I was young kid, a 28-year-old. Boyfriend of Grace Jones, and you'd come up 54th Street, and there was people everywhere. It was like a crowd that, right across the whole 54th Street, both sides, to both avenues, and there was a little guy, a doorman, picking out people who can get in. Of course, Grace got in because she knew Steve Rebell, who was one of the owners, and it was, you like somebody said, if you got past the door and you paid your $20. You could do anything you wanted. There were no rules. Of course, people were doing anything they wanted, basically. It was an old theater, and there was like about 2,000-3,000 people in there partying, and a lot of celebrities. It was before iPhones, and, obviously there were photos taken by Studio 54 photographers, but they had approval, so people could, relax and be themselves. And no, it was great. I was standing there one night, and Grace was doing something else. I was looking for her, and some little guy with white hair comes up and takes a picture with me with this Instamatic camera, and he says, "What are you famous for?" And I'm like, "Nothing, as far as I know." And he's like, "I'll put you in my magazine." And it was Andy Warhol, of course. And it was Interview Magazine. So yeah, so I ended up having this crazy time in New York with Grace and Andy were up at the factory, and all of her friends, the whole kind of, the gay clubs and that whole scene was still happening. It's right before AIDS started. So it was, Christopher Street. We lived very close to there. So, and she, she was an icon, and she did a lot of performances and a lot of the clubs there. And I came with her. New York was kind of dangerous in those days. This is before Giuliani came in, and, Grace's brother, he was robbed, held up at gunpoint right in her at her entrance to her building, and they took everything. I think they left his underwear, but that was it. So I said, "That's not." And then she had been held up and tied up at gunpoint. So I remember I bought guns somewhere in Colorado, and I was carrying one or two guns at all times. It was a 1-year mandatory prison sentence, but there were no metal detectors, so you could I could walk in armed to a restaurant or a club because I didn't want to get tied up and robbed. So it was a crazy time. But anyway, this is part of my life. At the time, I was also I'd done some acting when I was in high school, and I decided to go to an acting class with Grace, and Warren Robertson was the acting coach. He had Tom Hulce was there, and Andy McDowell, and anyway, I was watching the acting class, and I got really fascinated by it, and ended up taking a couple of classes. And I guess he saw something in me. He said, "Maybe you're a frustrated artist. That's why you've been doing all these things. You've been, martial arts. I used to do music, play in a band, and when I was younger, in the paint and all those things. And he kind of suggested I should try acting, which I did. And I decided to not to go to MIT and sort of try to pursue an acting career.
It's really incredible and very unconventional. I mean,
sorry for the long answer, but it was.
No, we love the long answer. The less I talk, the better. Absolutely. We were talking about that transition, right? From chemical engineering to Hollywood. You had such like this crazy path, really did. And so what were some of like those biggest challenges that you faced really shifting your focus in your careers? And I'm asking you that because I think a lot of our listeners probably face a lot of challenges, especially in the climate that we're in today, looking to change something in their life.
Yeah, it was a time of change for me. It was I was under a lot of pressure. I mean, my parents wanted me to go to MIT. I didn't even tell them I picked up acting. My dad would call me once in a while because this is during the times you had to get an operator to call an overseas call and all of that. So we spoke every couple of months, and he would say, how's school? And I would say, fine, because I went to acting school. I didn't have to lie, but basically I auditioned for a couple of roles, different movies, and one was a boxing movie. And I remember I stood in this long line. Maybe there was hundreds of guys up there. I stood in this line. I got to this table, and there's a woman sitting there with a piece of paper with my name. And she says, at the time I was Hans Lundgren. She says, "You're Hans Lundgren." And she said, "How tall are you?" And I said, 6'4". She said, "Too tall. Next." And I looked behind her. There was a sign, handwritten sign, said Rocky, Roman numeral 4. And I was like, oh shit, a Rocky movie. I love Rocky movies. So I was actually, through Warren, my acting coach, I ended up having dinner with this guy, John Hertzfeld, who was a good friend of Sylvester Stallone's. And he's a director. And me, Grace, John, and Warren, and the restaurant owner. And John said, you're perfect. This script that Stallone's writing, the script about this Russian fighter, and you're perfect for it. And I said, well, I went up for it and I was turned down. And he said, no, don't worry, just give me some 8x10s. So I jumped on my bike, drove down to the village, from the Upper East Side, and got some 8x10s of mean boxing gear from Australia, and gave them to John, and nothing happened. But, a month later or so, I got a call, and Sly wanted to meet me, and I finally ended up auditioning for the movie and getting the part. But it was tough to change my life, and I had to move to LA. Grace hated LA; she liked New York, so we ended up being apart a lot. So there was, LA was a harder town than New York. New York was more. It was a little friendlier, in my opinion, anyway. There was more neighborhood feeling, and I had friends there. And in LA, I didn't know anybody, so I really had to try to find some inner strength to sort of get through all the workouts and get through the fact that I was on my own and I had a very uncertain future at the time.
Really incredible. And just, I just gotten to know you just a little bit over working on, a project with you. And I know that you come to the table every day with grit that you have picked up, that you learned, then you're probably born with it, because you really don't let anything stop you. I mean, the fact that you went into an audition, it's too tall. Well, you still went for it, and thank God that you did, because it has to have been one of the highlights of your career, right?
Yeah, it changed my life. I mean, it got me a role in a big Hollywood movie that was a big hit and opened doors for me in my career, my personal life. Unfortunately, the relationship with Grace suffered, and we ended up breaking up after the movie. But no, it did teach me grit. It teach me dedication and focus, discipline. I mean, a lot of those things came from studying, but also a lot from martial arts. That it's when you're in the middle of the fight and you're bleeding, and they got to pick you up, and somebody has to tie your belt back on because you're too weak to do it yourself, and they push you back in there on the mat. That's, if you can hang in there and you can push through that, suddenly the other guy goes down and doesn't get back up, and you're in the haze. You realize oh shit, I won. And you're like, you don't hardly know what's going on. You're like, but you remember the feeling that if I hadn't pushed through, I would have lost that fight and lost the tournament,
What got you interested in martial arts?
I was when I was a kid, at about 14, I was sent up to my grandparents in northern Sweden by my dad because my dad we had a very tough relationship. He was very violent with me and my mom, and he beat me a lot when I was a kid, and I had this trauma from that experience. But when you're a kid, especially in the '60s, there's nowhere to go. There's no help you can get. I mean, you just got to take it. So I wanted to get away from home, and I was lucky that he set me away. Otherwise, I would have gotten in trouble for sure. A lot of my friends got into drugs. Some are dead now, and I escaped barely. But I had this sort of unfulfilled feeling inside in my chest. And I think when I discovered martial arts, it gave me a way to express myself physically and to feel strong and to feel in control, and the fact that I could defend myself and all of those things that I hadn't been able to do when I was younger. I think that was one part of it. And the other part was I realized later that it's very spiritual. Martial arts come from Zen Buddhism. Originally it's the samurai code, which is about discipline, is about respect for yourself, for the other fighter. There are a lot of positive aspects of it that I was also searching for. And so I think my search led me through martial arts. I kind of found myself, and I eventually became good at it and became a champion. And then through that, I kind of overcame that feeling of being worthless and being weak, how I felt when I was about 12 or 13.
Actually really beautiful, and such a healthier way to cope. Such a, when we talk a lot and on this podcast, we do talk a lot about, mental health and being in the spirits industry, which we'll talk about your amazing project that you have in just a moment, but always looking to find that positive outlet, right? Always looking to find something. And I think a lot of times, for me, my family's big into dance. They have dance studios. So it's been like ballet and tap and, just getting your body moving and just forcing yourself into a form of art versus anything else. And I do think I have a little bit of a kinship with you. I believe that you came from a small town. I do as well. And that's like a whole nother shitstorm. Let's just say when you're growing up, you can either go one way or a complete opposite way if you don't have that positive, outlook or place to go.
Yeah, exactly. I agree. I was trying to express my trauma, whatever it was I had from my childhood. I was trying to express it through martial arts, and you're right. It's called martial arts. It's an art, and I ended up in the performing arts, of course, which is not that far removed, really. If you think about it, you're on the mat, you're doing performing a kata form, or you're fighting, and they ended up doing the same in movies, but somebody's filming it, and you're entertaining an audience. But it's also an art, and I think that it was David Mamet, the writer, who said, "Nobody with a happy childhood ever ended up in show business." And I think
Really?
yeah, I think it's a good quote because maybe it's a generalization, but there's something you're trying to heal. You're trying to heal yourself by being engaged in something artful, I think,
Yeah, I agree. I agree so much. Well, let's fast forward a bit because I want to talk about what you are doing today, Dolph, and really what led you to Hard Cut Vodka. Can you tell our listeners once again, you've made so many interesting transitions along your journey. What the heck? Now we're going from Hollywood to vodka founder with your wife, Emma. How did this happen? And why did this happen? And did anything influence this from your background as a chemical engineer or no?
Okay, good.
So much to unpack. I know.
Chemical engineering. I agree. I mean, I had not used chemical engineering as an actor, except for mixing drinks once in a while, late nights after a movie wrapped. But I was up in Santa Barbara. This is 6 years ago with Emma, who I was dating at the time. She's not my wife, and I was trying to find a vodka to drink straight up because I like it straight, over ice, and I couldn't really find anything I liked. They were all very sharp, and I had used to drink vodkas from Sweden, from Russia. I used to go to Russia back when Putin was helping in the fight against terror, and it was you could go there. It was okay, and they had some really smooth vodka, Stoli Cristal, which I think I used to order from. I used to be able to order it, but now you can't get it anywhere. And they were very smooth, and I couldn't find one. So I think I was complaining, and Emma basically said, "Why don't you do your own? I mean, you're a chemical engineer. You drink a lot of vodka. And I said, well, everybody's doing liquor now. She says, well, not vodka. Everybody's tequila and whiskey, and then I realized, looking at the vodka space, that it looked kind of, the business side started appearing as it looked kind of boring. It didn't look like a lot of fun compared to tequila and whiskey, and I sort of set out to create a really great tasting vodka, smooth vodka that I could sip, but also to try to have a little fun with a brand. And I didn't really know, we didn't really know what we wanted exactly, but just we had a certain instinct, and I think it led us to finding the name, to designing a bottle in a certain way, kind of a bit of a badass looking bottle, and a kind of a name, Hard Cut. That's a little bit kind of like my characters in the movies. And we found a vodka, and it turned out to be an American vodka, which was obviously great. Even a better idea now, when all these tariffs and everything is coming down. Idaho was a Rocky Mountain vodka, potato vodka. So yeah, it all all of my career as an actor, and also a little bit my engineering came to play here.
Absolutely. It's an interesting journey, and especially that you landed on vodka, Dolph. Vodka, we like to say a lot in this business, keeps our lights on. It is one of the world's most popular spirits for sure. But like you said, when you look at the shelf, like if you're at the liquor store or at the bar, it can become a little bit daunting, right? Like, which ones do we gravitate towards? Which ones have just a little more oomph to them and not come across so plain? Maybe it's a word even. So how did you choose that location in Idaho and to use potatoes as your base grain?
Yeah, the reason we ended up with potatoes was simply because of the taste. What we did was Emma and I received 30, 40 samples of vodka, some of them from Idaho, some from other states, some from overseas, and we tried them one after the other until we found one we liked. And Emma came up with this make a face test. Basically, if you drink it straight and you make a face, it's no good. It's got to be smooth enough where you can drink it without making a face. And it's difficult for vodka. And most big vodka brands, you certainly make a face because they're very harsh, kind of like aviation fuel or something. And we had some. We got about 10 or 12 samples from Idaho as well, and some of them were wheat, some were rye. I think some were potato, some were corn, and we ended up loving this one sample that was potato, and with a certain production process. So all the potato vodkas they had from that distillery, there were some that were better and some weren't as good. So we liked a certain one, and that's the one we picked. So it was a subjective sort of a process of finding the one we liked the best.
Yeah. But, I think that it's really interesting that you chose, potato as that base starch, because it does give that creamy mouthfeel. It's a less harshness, like you said, on the palate. And I also find it to be very mixable.
I agree. Yeah, it's a better taste now when I've learned bit of mixology terms, and I've spoken to Philip Duff and
Mm-hmm.
you, and people are more professional in this field than I am. I'm just learning it, but yes, it is a creamier feel. We just went with our gut. It's a creamier feel. It's got a smoother taste. It's slightly sweeter, if you want to put it that way,
Mm-hmm.
and it's also overproof. So that's an idea we had to go overproof to go a little make it stronger than the other vodkas. So making it a little tougher, and also we realized that in a drink, it takes the ice better because it doesn't get as diluted. So it actually tastes great with a little bit of ice or in a cocktail.
Yeah, it really makes a perfect martini.
Perfect. Yes. 5-1 martini was my favorite. We experimented with that too, me and Philip and Emma, and we found the 5-1 was the best ratio, and we like it, on the rocks and with the green olives to get the savory taste of the olives with the martini is just perfect.
Absolutely. I think that even, just the brine and the saltiness with that smoothness and almost that butteriness that the potato gives you, it's a match made in heaven. It's so good.
Yeah, yeah. It's a little bit like it's like having a little snack, but it's really a martini.
Yeah, but really it's a martini and it's a hard cut martini. Absolutely. Can you talk a bit about being in the beverage space, Dolph? Because this is something new for you. You've had such an incredible career and going from, my God, your Studio 54 days to today with a vodka brand. Do you see any similarities of the two industries as far as Hollywood goes and the beverage industries? Or is there some things you like better or worse?
Well, okay, that's an interesting question. I mean, everybody says Hollywood is a tough business. It's very hard, and it's very subjective. Nobody knows what's going to make a good movie. You could hire the best screenwriters, the best directors, put $100 million down, and it sucks, and nobody wants to see it. It tanks, right? And I suppose the liquor business is a bit the same. Like you have to go with your gut. You have to create something that you love and support it, and hope other people are going to love it too. So they're similar in that respect, that you're kind of presenting something to the public, something you put your soul into, and you hope they're going to love it too. And it's an experience. You're selling an experience. So they're similar in that respect. I did feel like, it was hard for me to change from Hollywood to the liquor industry because I didn't know anything about it. I didn't know the terms. I didn't really know how things work. And starting this company with pretty much on my own with some help, Steve Lotman, and I've had help, but I've had to make decisions myself. That was difficult. The fundraising was difficult.
Yeah.
That was one of the most challenging parts of it. Still is, um, because you want to expand, but to expand you need funds, and to get the funds you need to have a track record. So it's a little
Mhm.
bit like, how do you get going? I read a bunch of books about it, and it was helpful, but now I'm doing it for real, and so it's a bit scary sometimes. But I'm sort of used to that from the film business too, because it's the same thing. You're directing a movie, producing a movie, you make it a bold choice, and you don't know if anybody else is going to like it. I did feel like I have a sense that the liquor industry is a little more fun. Like people in it are, I enjoy the people I've met in the business more than Hollywood almost. I think that show business is, people can be very self critical because there's just something about exposing your inner feelings and being an actor. And even if you're a publicist or if you're, a producer, it's, I don't know. I just, people are more guarded. I find that the liquor business, what I've seen at least, I think people are kind of a little more fun loving. I feel that way.
Mhm.
Maybe not the investors, but, but the other people that are involved. They like to have a drink. They like to, it's like being with actors. I love actors. They're fun. It's just sometimes the other people in show business can be hard to deal with.
Yeah, it's funny there's so many similarities, but with the hospitality industry, I can tell you, we lead with hospitality. We
Mm,
do. folks like myself that have been in the industry for a long time, they really want to create a lovely experience, whether you're entertaining at home or you're working in your bar, whatever it might be. And you really genuinely want the other person to feel good. And that's really part of the heart and the core of this industry. It's that simple because we lead with that.
Yeah.
So maybe that's, those good feelings that you're getting.
Yeah, I think so. The good feelings come from the fact that I think the contact in the hospitality industry is person to person, whereas in Hollywood, it goes through a medium of somebody's being filmed, then it's being edited, then there's post production, then it's being distributed, and then you have it's impersonal in one way, a little more impersonal, like there's not the actor has the contact with the public, but the rest of the people don't. So I feel a little more relaxed with the people in your business and our business now.
Our business, Dolph. It's our business. Yes. Yes. Can you talk about, what are your hopes for Hard Cut Vodka? When you and Emma, talk about it, you're just getting started. You had an amazing launch. What are your hopes for this brand?
Our hopes for Hard Cut is that we want people to enjoy it. We want as many people as possible to be able to enjoy Hard Cut Vodka and maybe even bring some people over to the vodka category that maybe haven't had vodka for a while because they think it's just a nasty tasting spirit that you have to throw orange juice on to drink. We hope that it's going to be something people want to drink over ice, straight up, or in a nice martini or one of our other drinks. And it's another way for me to entertain my fans and the public and connect with them and do it through a product that's my product. It's not a movie that I play. Even if I play the lead, there's a lot of other components. But here it's a bit more of a personal product that I'm trying to get people to enjoy.
Yeah, and you're doing it, and you won double gold, which is so amazing. Congratulations for the San Francisco World Spirits. I mean, you're already coming out swinging. Do you understand how hard that is to accomplish in our industry? It's not easy. I'm a judge, for Christ's sake. I can tell you how many spirits we poo-poo or no, this one isn't good enough. It literally has to pass a taste test from some of the greatest tasters in the world.
Wow.
Congratulations.
Hearing from you. Thank you. Yeah, I mean, I'm not aware of it exactly how hard it is. I guess we just happen to get the formula right. So
no, you really did. So I was so excited when I saw the news. I'm like, yes, that's awesome, because I can tell you that it is known as the most prestigious judging of spirits in the world. Wow. And there's about 80 judges and everything's done blind. So it's completely fair. So when they taste that, they don't know that they're tasting something from Dolph. They don't know that it's hard cut. They're really, really nerding out on what is it made from? Should it taste like this, right? Is the viscosity right? Is everything coming together to make that perfect potato vodka? And getting a double gold is not a small thing. So congrats. Bravo. I was real excited.
Thank you. Oh, it's excited too.
Yeah, it's incredible. Absolutely incredible. Before I let you get back to your Hard Cut business day, can you tell our listeners how you are drinking Hard Cut Vodka?
Yeah, I like it a few different ways. One, which I really learned to like a lot during I like it a lot of ways. One that I really learned to enjoy during our launch party was a cut above, which is this drink that Emma came up with. It's fresh Fuji apple, lemon, and ginger juice over ice, hard cut vodka with a mint garnish. And the freshness of the juice is like anti-inflammatory juice, where the vodka is so great. I love it that way. And I think otherwise, my favorite way is the 5-to-1 martini with the 3 green olives, Italian olives. I like that one because it's savory. It has a good taste to it. It has got a little bite from the overproof, and the vodka takes the ice really well and dilutes really well. So it's a great drink. Oh, on the rocks, of course.
Yeah, it really is. I've had the pleasure of tasting it, and it's the real deal. You really came out with something very special. So congratulations.
Thanks, Bridget. Appreciate it.
You're welcome. And with that, Dolph, I just want to wish you just some great health and a lot of peace. And thank you so much for coming on Served Up. And I do hope that she'll come back. And I do hope you'll bring Emma next time.
I will. And the same to you. All the best to you. And I hope to be on your show again soon.
Absolutely. Cheers to you.
Cheers.
Thanks for listening. Served Up is brought to you by Southern Glazers Wine and Spirits. Produced by Zunu.online. Music by We Killed the Lion can be found on Spotify. Make sure to subscribe to be notified of our future Served Up episodes. Cheers.